Alright, so in this servo video what we're going to talk about is some code that I have pre-written to save us some time. Now in this I am using the UDT that we built, right? So the UDT over here, that is called Basic Motion Controls. Now you can tell by looking at this, if I look at the tags, if I go over to monitor tags or something like that, you can tell I have each one of these, and each one of these is a motion instruction, but it is based upon this right here. As you can tell right here, I made the first tag, and the first tag was called motion controls, and then my UDT, or my data type, was my UDT that we made, which is basic motion controls. Therefore, after that, I had each one of my motion controls that I needed, which is the MSO, MSF, the motion axis shutdown, the motion axis shutdown reset, the motion axis fault reset, motion axis stop, the actual motion axis home, the motion axis jog, the motion axis move to position, the motion axis jog, and then our gear, and then the motion dynamic change, or change dynamics. So each one of these has 10 instances of itself, starting with 0 to 10. Now as we talk about this a little bit deeper, let's talk about the code and the way it's written. Real simple, I have some controls that I have on my push button stations that I could use. These controls again will operate and start the machine, or in this case the machine being just a wheel that I have on this right here, just a wheel, and control from a servo controller and control from this processor. Now with that said, let's go ahead and talk about the order of operation, the servo order of operation. Now this is the best practice that again I can go through and talk about, and again this is theoretical speaking. So we're going to talk about rung 2 right here. The very first thing I do when actually rung 0 is just basically like turning the system on in a seal-in circuit. So I'm using the light, the push button light, as my seal-in circuit. So once the light is on, then I'm able to come in and say, okay, if the state is equal to 0, then and my motion group is synced. So all I'm saying with my motion group synced is I'm saying that the motion group right here, that all servos up underneath that, which in my case is only one, all those servos would be communicating and synced up properly, meaning that they would be working through the Servo ring and everything would be fine, meaning the communication. So I'm saying that that's synced, the motion group is happy, and then I'm going to go ahead and issue my motion axis, or motion shutdown, or motion axis off. So which is going to be my basically I just called my the servo that I wanted to turn off, and then I did again my motion controls, and then .ms off, or MSF, and then the first instance of that. If you want to see that real quick, you can see all I did was pick the first instance of that, even though I have 9 more instances after that I can choose to use. So the very first thing I do is shut the servo off. Now the reason I do that is for safety mechanisms, and to make sure that the system is controlled. Now there are exceptions to that where you don't want to shut it off first, but generally speaking it cleans up the code, and there's going to make the servo, it's going to allow the servo to do proper functionality of any kind of run commands and stuff of that nature. Now rung 3, what I'm doing is I'm saying if state the current state is equal to state 1, then we're going to come in here and make sure there's no faults, and if there's no shutdown, motion axis shutdown, or there's no physical faults, then and there's no servo faults whatsoever, then we will allow it to go into the next state, which is state 2. However, if there is a fault, okay, if there's a shutdown status, then we want to issue as soon as the fault reset button is pressed, then we want to go ahead and use we want to go ahead and issue the motion axis shutdown reset. Now in this case, if there is a physical fault or a fault with the servo, Then we want to reset again. Once we use that reset button, I'll show you that reset button too. It's down here. So this is tied to live PLC, live I/O. So we do have a separation in what we're trying to accomplish, right? So we're not automatically resetting a fault. Automatically resetting a fault on a servo to me is inducing danger or a hazard, because then you could potentially cause movement if something were to actually be something wrong with the system, or maybe somebody is working on the system or something of that nature. So just always know that you need to intervene, and this is my the intentions behind this simple controls and simple illustration of what I'm doing. So I'm shutting off the servo. Next, I'm coming in verifying that if there's any faults, that we can go ahead and clear those faults. If there's no faults, let's continue on to the very next rung. Very next rung is rung 4. If it's in state 2, then it comes down and says, okay, if the motion axis, or if the servo is not turned on, which is using the dot servo action status. Now that's within showing this little bus light, right? If the bus light is on, and currently it is on, right? Basically, and that's why initially why I turned the servo off in the very beginning. But if it's off, then I'm going to issue it an ACE motion axis on, or MSO if you for the instruction. Now again, I'm just using the UDT and using that very instruction for that. And then I'm saying if it's on, then I'm going to hold the servo. I'm going to say, okay, it has to be on for 2 seconds. Once it's on for 2 seconds, and I verified again that the motion axis, or the servo action status is on, and then the done is over here established on the actual motion instruction, then we're going to go ahead and move into state 3. And in state 3, what we're going to do is we're going to home the servo. So in our case, how do we home the servo? We're going to actually come in here, and our homing situation says we're active, and we're just going to home to a 0 position, meaning no matter where the servo is, we're going to call it 0. So this is what this does, and as soon as the PC bit, which is process complete, if you notice, each one of these has a the motion axis, or each one of these motion instructions has their own dot, whatever they are. EN would be enabled, DN would be done, ER would be in error, IP is in progress, and PC is complete, process complete. Once it's in process complete and the servo is homed for 2 seconds, I'm going ahead and saying, okay, it's home for two seconds. Let's go ahead and move to state 4. And state 4 is where we're actually deriving motion. State 4 is basically saying we're having the first MAN or MAM. In this case, where we want to move forward, and we want to go to a position of 50. The speed we want to have 5, and we're going ahead and running an S curve on this one. And the reason I'm running an S curve on this one is because basically at a speed of 5, it's really a sharp, it kind of jerks this whole mechanism up here on this table. So what I'm doing is I'm doing an S curve, so it's a nice subtle thing. So I do have a trend for that, and you will get to see that trend. So we're actually going to run the system, and I'm going to show you that. So what I wanted to describe in rung 6, what we're doing is an S curve, and the acceleration and deceleration is what makes the S curve work more efficiently. All right, so and to break that down even further, if you wanted to see the help file, and you wanted to see an S curve versus a something like an S curve versus a trapezoid versus an S curve, right here you can easily see this, right? So you have a trapezoid, which is going to be very sharp, and then you have an S curve, which is you have a nice little curve to where it's going, right? So again, when it comes down to it, you do have And to keep in mind too, we'll talk about velocity standstill and stuff of that nature. So just keep in mind you do have that help instruction in there too. So afterward, after it gets to its said position of 50, the servo, this servo right here, will get to that position of 50. Then the process complete bit turns on, and then we're holding that for 2 seconds. Once we hold that for 2 seconds, we'll transition to state 5, which will then go to a negative. We'll move to not a negative position of 50, but we're doing a negative, we're actually moving the servo in the opposite direction, the same counts that we moved it forward. So it's essentially we should be going from 0 to 50 to 50 to 0, 50 to 0 to 50, 50 to 0. And again, we have the same exact setup in here as far as the attributes, as far as the acceleration, deceleration, S-curve, and all of it's based upon units per second. Once the PC bit is complete for that and it has achieved its goal, then we want to hold that for 2 seconds and then transition to state 6, which in state 6 on rung 8 turns in and turns off, it does a motion access stop and stops the servo. So to show all this real quick, I'll actually come in here and we'll do the trend, and I'll actually push the start button so that you can see it working. And then what we'll do is you'll come in here, you'll see it 0 itself, and then you'll see it start running. Now the servo is actually running in real life, right? You can see it running right here, although the trend also illustrates that it is running as well. Now did you see once it transitioned, watch how the S-curve actually allows that to subtly change, right? So that was a nice slowdown. It wasn't a jerk, kind of a real sharp shutdown. It was a nice acceleration up, and it's a nice acceleration back down. So this will actually be going the opposite direction just here in a second. Nice illustration, or nice acceleration up right there. So that's basically an S-curve. Okay, so in this illustration we're showing an S-curve running. Now again, I can stop all of this by pressing the stop button, and then it will no longer run because the way I have the system set up, that the stop button is pressed, then it throws the state machine in a 0, and no matter what, if the servo is actually on, which it is, I cannot turn it. I can, and to prove that out, I can go to motion access direct commands and do a motion access off. And once I do an off, you see the bus light flashes, and I'm able to turn the servo by hand. See that? So the reasoning behind me doing the order of operation like I'm doing is so that I get proper functionality, and it's more reliable for the servo to do its scope of work. Okay, so if the servo is supposed to do a certain scope of work, you want to make sure your order of operation of your instructions and the way you're programming your instructions and ladder logic, that it's going to actually be reliable. And the best thing to do is to make sure you make sure it's off, make sure there's no faults, then come in here, turn it on. Once you have control over it and it is on, then you can do movements from that point. In my case, in this illustration, what I'm doing is I'm homing it just to give you a back and forth illustration of maybe like a diverter or something like that, or just something that would move back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Now we could do that based upon proc switches, we could do that based upon many different things. This is just a simple set of code that we're really kind of giving you a base illustration of. And again, it's really simple. Let's actually look at the logic start when I push the start button. So I push the start button, it comes in here, it homes, it's homing, and now it's doing its movement. And as soon as now it's in the IP bit, which is in progress, right? So as soon as it gets to position, the PC bit will come on, and then it will go to the next state. Now in this case, the IP bit is on because it's now moving in the opposite direction, and then as soon as it gets to that back to 0, what it's going to do is turn on the PC bit, and then we start the process all over again. It's a very simple set of code, very understandable, but if I can pass anything on here, if it's passing on the fact of the order of operation of your servos and or your servo controls, so that you can make sure that when you're using the proper instruction at the proper time to get the proper goal. And I can't illustrate that highly enough. I mean, it's very, very, very important. Or else you're going to have a system that's either dangerous or not reliable. And neither one of those are acceptable in the automation field. So, I mean, when it comes down to it, I'm trying to give you some best practices that I go and kind of go off of and kind of do, so that you kind of understand real simple on at least what I have to work with. And this again is a Kinetix 6000, so it is Sercos, it's not SIP motion. Same principles apply. It's the same basic coding behind it. The communication protocol is different. I really wish I did have a SIP motion protocol that I could use, but honestly, I bought all this stuff myself, so making these YouTube videos and making this training program and stuff of that nature, it's basically everything's out of pocket. So with that said, hopefully you learned a lot from this video, and with that said, if there's anything else that I can do to express different ways to program servos and different ways to do that, I'll always give the examples that I possibly can to help pass the information on, because it's very important that we share and we all grow from what we're learning, what we're having roadblocks on, and that we achieved and got past. And if we share, the more we share, the more we all grow, and the more we can move forward. So with all that said, hopefully you learned a lot from this video, and we'll see you guys on the next one.